Today on Locked On Rockies, as the World Series is set between two of the biggest budget teams in Major League Baseball, the Colorado Rockies are reportedly cutting payroll.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Rock on Rockies fans, welcome into the Locked On Rockies podcast for today, the 21st day of October in the year 2024. I am your host of the Locked On Rockies podcast, Paul Holden, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel, where you can be part of the show. You can fire off your Rockies hot takes. You can let me know what's on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies, because we're free and streaming, bringing you all your favorite daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on all those streaming services and the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Be part of the show. Fire off your Rockies hot takes. Like Jonathan Cabrera says, let him cook. Nolan Jones' last 30 at-bats were great. Talking about Nolan Jones, talking about the impact of the outfield last week. And True Story Jay, how the hell Major League Baseball put Tovar over Lindor and De La Cruz for Gold Glove. You never know with Gold Glove voting, but Ezequiel Tovar's defense was elite. And when you compare him defensively to those other players, I think the defensive metrics line up to being more positive for Tovar in some categories. Of course, the offense much better for those other two players as well. And we know offense does influence Gold Glove voting. Gold Glove's a weird one, but you can't doubt Ezequiel Tovar's defense. Maybe we'll take a quick peek at that comment later this week and see if there's any explanation after Lindor I know they had lost yesterday, but made a great play late. And Ellie De La Cruz, of course, has set the world ablaze since he's gone onto the scene here. But today, according to Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post, the Rockies are reportedly cutting payroll here and going to be losing the contract of Charlie Blackmon and are shopping for trades for Brendan Rodgers, Cal Quantrill, and Austin Gomber here, to say the least. And honestly, when I sit here and focus on, do I like this? Do I not like this? I don't mind this move. I don't mind this move because this is the type of stuff that they'll have to say. I don't need the sprinkled on, we're going to be competitive in 2025, because I don't think that's going to be the case. Personally, I would love to be shocked. And I'll dive into all that here in just a second, because before we do that, got to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so over on the Denver Post Rockies Journal, what will Colorado's offseason look like? A forecast that includes trades and, yes, a lower payroll. We've talked about the impact of the change in streaming and local TV deals, but here's some stats from Patrick Saunders here. Let's see here. And again, they call it a construction project, not rebuilding. I thought that was some interesting language. All right. Here is Patrick's offseason forecast. Colorado's payroll will take a dip in 2025, multiple sources confirmed. That's because the team's spending is closely tied to its TV revenue, and that revenue has fallen. Like most major league teams, the Rockies' money stream was disrupted by the demise of regional sports networks. Before AT&T Sportsnet shut down, the Rockies garnered about $57 million in TV money in 2023. According to Sport Track, the Rockies' total payroll allocation in 23 was $171 million, ranking 14th in the majors. But as the Rockies switched to their online streaming service, Rockies TV, which is produced and distributed by Major League Baseball, revenue took a hit and Colorado's total payroll dipped to $147.3 million, 17th this past season. Even with retired outfielder Charlie Blackmon's $13 million contract coming off the books, the Rockies plan to spend less in 2025. And he adds this is important, I think, for a lot of fans out there too. This is important for you fans out there. But as their payroll reduction is not tied to attendance at Coors Field. Despite back-to-back 100-loss seasons, fans continue to flock to Rockies games, and there's only been a slight decline in attendance. The Rockies drew an average of 34,400. We already talked about all this. So, yes, it's still there. But the change of the payrolls, the cutting of payments, the shopping of these players, it doesn't necessarily surprise me. It doesn't make me think that the Rockies are going to be overall competitive and do a big swing and add something in here. But it does make me sit there and say, this team is ready to move on. This team is ready to actually embrace what it's going through, the construction project. And by trading away those contracts and freeing up that money, albeit not a ton of money, it's the right path. You have a lot of interesting young arms on the way that need spots in the rotation. We have done and seen the Austin Gomber experience since the Nolan Arenado trade, and it hasn't panned out to the full fruition. We've seen good moments. We've seen Austin Gomber, develop into a fine back end starter, and maybe we'll have some benefit from a place where his pitches can break and move a little bit more. Same, Cal Quantrill was just kind of the classic thing. I mean, where was this really a long-term plan with Cal Quantrill all along anyway? And Brendan Rodgers has never fully hit his ceiling, and the ask and the cost of Brendan Rodgers is only going to go up and up. And if you're not fully confident in him, while also having Amador in the wings and trying to build him up, you're going to need to create a path and a spot for him to play. It's going to be really interesting to see what the Rockies' plan is at second base immediately if they do move on from Rodgers here, because they're all being shopped here in the offseason. They're trying to move. That's what the reports are. And so that means that the Rockies are going to have to do something, and they're going to have to add a bat. And Patrick talks about that a little bit later on in the piece as well. But let's see here. Just to give you some more context from Patrick on why the Rockies are looking into trading those players. The reason behind possible trades for the veterans are twofold. First, the Rockies need to clear out space on the roster for up-and-coming players, particularly in the starting rotation. Starters such as right-hander Chase Dollander and lefty Sean Sullivan and Carson Palmquist are knocking on the big league door. Second, by trading Rodgers and Quantrill, the Rockies could save money and use it elsewhere. According to Cots Baseball Contracts, Quantrill is projected to make $8 million in his final year of arbitration, while Rodgers is projected to make $5 million. Gomber is also projected to make $5 million in his final year of arbitration. So if you're sitting there thinking, if you do move on, that's, from all three of them, that frees you up $18 million to go up. And here's what Saunders follows up with. Either via trade or free agency, the Rockies' primary goal is to add a steady, consistent hitter to their lineup. They're coming off a season in which their .242 average was the lowest in franchise history, and that 1,617 strikeouts were the most. With young players such as Michael Toglia, Nolan Jones, and Jordan Beck still experiencing strikeout-filled growing pains, the Rockies need a veteran who can provide quality at-bats, put the ball in play, and drive in runs. If you free up $18 million, that'll do. That'll do. I mean, because here's what you got to remember here. When you look at this is from Sport Track here. When you look at Rockies' current payroll here, it's great. The Chris Bryant deal is wild. $18 million. I don't know. Say you do it over a 2-year deal. Say you do $18 million. You do it over a 2-year deal. You could be freeing up. That is Cal Quantrill money. That is Daniel Bard money. That is, I mean, you're freeing up a spot to be able to get a guy at a decent deal. Jake Cave, let's see. I don't know if he's still listed here on this list because he's not technically under contract anymore. No, he's not. Regardless, you have a lot of young guys still that you can figure out. You have Greg Jones and Adiel Amador. That could be really interesting if the Rockies want to go there. But it seems like second base would be that spot to add in that veteran. You could maybe even slide him into, find an outfielder or something like that. But Jacob Stallings has got a $2 million deal. Can you find those type of players, those veteran players that can contribute for those solid deals? $18 million in terms of the Rockies when it comes to contract value is pretty darn good, especially when you think about how that could translate into a couple of year deals. Again, this is these are players that are making more due to arbitration and things like that. But this will open up a path where if you move on from those contracts, if you free up that money, you will be putting yourself in a position that you have a little extra to spend and to go after some free agents there. And it's encouraging at least to hear that the team is focused on adding in that veteran bat. I guess the other big question though is I do wonder what the plan is for Chris Bryant. And his health and him and his impact onto the lineup. I mean, if Chris Bryant's going to be, a factor, does that change anything? And I wonder what that Chris Bryant deal means for this the payroll as well. I mean, can you restructure with Chris Bryant? That would be I doubt it, in terms of from Bryant's perspective. But the point is, it's at least good because I actually really thought the Rockies were just going to run it generically back. They were, find some, do a lower level move, add a Jake Cave-esque player. But if you free up a little money, you might be able to convince some people here to come hit for a little bit at Coors, to bounce back, to make a little bit money, to make a little bit of a little money and maybe not come to Colorado for a long time. But you do need to do something. Because I don't think you're going to be able to go after some of the big dogs. You're not going to get Juan Soto to come to Colorado. You're not going to get Alex Bregman. You're not going to get some of these huge names that are going to come up and do big damage for your team and be one of these huge names. Like even a Pete Alonso type of deal. I don't necessarily think you're able to go out and get any of the big names that are available. But it makes it easier. It makes it possible to maybe go after and could you maybe think about a JD Martinez? I don't know. I mean, I don't necessarily think that you have the money to pay some of these guys, but there are some interesting names, and you do wonder how much the Rockies can go and be aggressive. But there will be options. There will be players that are interested in coming and having that experience and batting a little bit more at Coors. But the question when you're adding that bat is it going to be, are you planning on them being a positional player as well? How are you using the DH next year? And with that statement too, it kind of paints a little bit of an uncertain picture as well. Like what exactly is Chris Bryant's role on this team? It's got to be DH, right? It'll be really, really fascinating to see if the Rockies are able to get deals done and what deals look like for their players, because I really do want to know what the valuation of these Rockies players are throughout the rest of baseball. And freeing up that payroll could give you a situation where you can add a veteran bat. How quality is that bat going to be? How big of a swing are the Rockies going to take on filling that need? I don't know. And is it a better idea to invest in the offense over the pitching staff? Let's talk about that coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes PrizePicks. PrizePicks is your number one spot for daily fantasy sports action. Over 10 million, yes, over 10 million members and billions of dollars in prizes awarded. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on two players for a shot up to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. What do I mean by that? I mean you pick more or less on strikeouts, walks, base hits, home runs. You pick the lineup. You pick the players. Nobody taking them from your waiver wire. No one taking your sleeper picks from you. your knowledge against the number. It is, they invented the flex play as well here on PrizePicks, which means you can still cash out your lineup if it isn't perfect. You can double your money, even if one of your picks does not hit. And PrizePicks puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Download the app today, the PrizePicks app, and use code LOCKEDONMLB to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That is a $5 lineup, getting you $50 instantly when you use the code LOCKEDONMLB on the PrizePicks app. PrizePicks, run your game. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We can find your team every day. If your team is the Colorado Rockies, you're in the right spot because that's what we do around here. Talk Rockies baseball free and streaming all week long here. And if you need more baseball action, Locked On MLB, perfect spot for your second listen of the day. Okay. So I'm just looking through quickly here of names that are available. And again, it's just, do you think that the Rockies are going to be able to go out and get any of these? These are from RJ Anderson's ranking the top 20 MLB free agents of the 2024-25 offseason from CBSSports.com. And you just keep scrolling, right? And you're going through, and it's Juan Soto, Corbin Burns, Alex Bregman, Max Fried, Blake Snell, Matt Chapman, even though Matt Chapman just signed the deal. So there's the update on the piece. Willie Adames, Ha-Sung Kim, Pete Alonso, Jack Flaherty, Anthony Santander, Max Scherzer, Shane Bieber, Nathan Eovaldi, Teoscar Hernandez, Christian Walker, Clay Holmes, Luis Severiano, Sean Manaea, Yusei Kikuchi. All those names are interesting, right? I couldn't imagine any of those names ending up with the Colorado Rockies. I just don't imagine that the Rockies are going to be able to pull off a deal to convince any of these players. And as we mentioned there with Patrick Saunders in the first piece, talking about clearing up space for young members of the rotation, I think the focus, if it's going to be on, adding something in, I think the focus needs to be on the offense. I think it's more important for and I know that's crazy to say, right? I know that's after how bad the Rockies pitching staff was, but if this is a cut payroll, develop type of year, construction project type of stuff, I would rather the Rockies add to start making this offense more of a threat and be able to back up that pitching staff in tough ball games. I am going to be more impressed if this Rockies offense takes step forwards on offense instead of defense, because in reality, with the pitching staff, we have to hope for a good bounce back. The big difference maker, hopefully this year for the Rockies at going into this season, will be the health of German Marquez and Antonio Senzatella. I know German didn't really embody us with a lot of faith, but Senza got a couple of starts. These two guys, I will take the Cal Quantrill, Austin Gomber swap for Senzatella and German Marquez, while leaving a spot hopefully open for Dollander, Palmquist, Sullivan, all those names that we mentioned earlier. I feel like that's okay for where the Rockies are at. That's okay for the situation at hand. I'm okay with seeing where we're at with that rotation and some of those young guys, especially if, maybe that means the bullpen might get them. I truly believe that if the Rockies are able to free up that money, if they do move on, one, you have to make a decision at second base. You are saying either your veteran bat that you're adding plays second base to fill in there, or it's a DH role type of thing, and you have someone else playing second. I don't know exactly who, or you're going Amador, right? You're going young at second as well. I think the first top priority is getting yourself an offense that can compete, an offense that isn't going to strike out 10 plus times a game, an offense that isn't going to have a franchise worst batting average, an offense that is going to win shootouts. That is the Rockies' offense being so poor last year was the reason why they lost. Was the reason why they lost 100 games. And I know you can point to the bullpen. And I absolutely valid. And you can point to the blown games and all that stuff. But there's too many times where the offense goes non-existent, and that includes at home. The offense needs to be the thing that is the thing that saves the Rockies. It always has been, and it always needs to be. You need to have an intimidating offense in a hitter's friendly environment. And look at the pitching. I mean, the Dodgers have been decimated by pitching injuries for a long time, but it doesn't matter because they have people that can hit. They have people that hit through 1 through 9 in the lineup. They have home run hitters. They got contact hitters. They got people that get on base, XYZ. So I really am not opposed to the payroll cutting moves here. I know, because a lot of people are going to sit there and say, it's great. 100 lost season, cutting payroll. Blah, blah, why don't you do this? I understand. But 2025 is still another year that the Rockies need to use to figure it out. There's no way that they're going to be able to just flip the switch immediately to jump up. They're going to be a team that has to see that incremental increase to bouncing back. However, on the flip side here, I'm not settling for 100 losses. If the Rockies lose 100 games this year again, this next season, if the Rockies continue to look like they are just outmatched, if the Rockies young guys do not develop, keep striking out, continue to not be positive impact players, that's a huge problem for the Rockies, and it speaks on their development side. This is a moment where the Rockies are going to have to prove to us that they can develop these players into major league talent. Not just major league talent, but talent that's going to be able to compete with the best, because no matter what you say, no matter what the situation, no matter what excuse you want to give for them, this team is in a locked and loaded division that ain't getting any easier anytime soon. You have a Giants team that's restructuring and looking to make moves and restructuring and relooking to build themselves back into the force that they are. You have a Padres team that's going to continue to be aggressive. I don't have any doubts in my mind that the Padres have any hesitations about making trades, making signings, doing this, doing that. That team has got a buzz and a passion behind it that I think is going to change the game for them. And of course, we have the team that's in the World Series right now, the Dodgers, being one of the biggest payrolls in baseball, and are only going to year after year after year after year after year after year after year are going to be that team that outspends you, going to be the team that out-acquires talent than you. How are you going to be good enough to beat them? It's going to take development. It's going to take creativity. It's going to take the Rockies doing stuff differently than they have in the past, looking in different directions, taking in new, bringing in new approaches, trying out new players, developing these young guys to being able to take after it. The best case scenario for the Rockies is that this young crop of arms pans out. This is why you kept Bud Black. If you are, and he says he wants to be part of the solution, this is Bud Black's moment to take these young pitching arms, especially if you're going to free out 2 spots in the starting rotation by getting rid of Quantrill and Gomber. This is Bud Black's time to be able to take these young interesting pitching prospects for the Rockies and craft them into Freeland, Marquez, and Senzatella again, and do what he did in the past. And John Gray, put John Gray in that mix as well. I'm not as worried about the cutting payroll part of it as I am the Rockies' ability to develop these young players into the stars that they need to be, into the quality of players that they need to be in order to compete, not just within the division, but throughout baseball as well. Look at the Guardians. Look at the Tigers. Look at the Royals. Look at the Orioles. Look at these young, exciting teams with superstar-level talent on them. And can you say the Rockies are in the same boat? You cannot. The young players and the player, there needs to be significant improvement from a long list of players for the Colorado Rockies for them to be even in the conversation of the Tigers. And that takes into the context of the entire season of the Tigers as well. All right. Be interesting to see how the Rockies cut payroll and what that means. It'd be interesting to see the moves that are a result of that cutting of payroll. 2 teams that ain't cutting payroll and have no business or have no problem spending money. Dodgers and the Yankees have found themselves in the World Series. Is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? We'll talk about that coming up next here on today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Before we do that, though, got to tell you about the folks that help make this show possible, and that includes FanDuel. FanDuel's got you covered for all the sports. We got basketball right around the corner. Well, men's basketball, as the WNBA just wrapped up. We got hockey in full swing. We got the NFL season underway, and baseball's World Series is here. And guess what? FanDuel has got you covered for all your betting action there. Make sure you're betting responsibly, as of course. And you can get a big return with FanDuel here, America's #1 sportsbook, when you head to the app. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check on the latest stats, live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. So you're getting all the action, all the information that you need on the app. And when you do place a bet, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet at FanDuel.com. FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. This is the Locked On Rockies podcast, for free and streaming on your favorite streaming services, bringing you your daily Colorado Rockies talk right here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where you can find your team every day. So, for the big markets, for the big media machines in Major League Baseball, they are sitting there plotting. They are so pumped. They are so pumped because now we can have a relevant World Series. It only matters, right? It only matters now because we got Dodgers, Yankees. Oh yeah, baby! And it's a good series, folks. Let me before we start along this. That is, I mean, you got two of the best teams, maybe the two best teams in baseball, if you can make an argument there, playing against each other in the World Series. The best players are on the biggest stage, and that is an exciting thing. I cannot deny. But I'm not going to sit here and deny the fact that these teams are putting other teams to shame. The Mets up there as well. And this isn't just the teams. This is a situation in which you can't let other owners sit there and say, oh, I can't spend. If you can own a baseball team, you can spend money this way. I'm sorry, you own a baseball team. You own a baseball team. You have way more money, way more power, way more influence. It is just different. But the thing that's going to make me mad is the fans. And it's like, oh, finally, we wasted our time last year with Texas and Arizona. Now we get something that's interesting. I'm sorry. The interesting World Series don't just exist for the Yankees and the Dodgers and your LA and your New York markets. For baseball, and yes, you can highlight that this is a good thing, but this is a series, and the fans and everything, and the response and the narratives and the little jabs and the little things that they'll sneak in throughout the coverage of this World Series. We'll take jabs at other markets. We'll take jabs at smaller things. We'll highlight the Shohei versus Aaron Judge. But you can't just sit there and think that these teams outspending everybody and having such an advantage when it comes to spending money. Advantage because their owners are willing to do it. That's the advantage. They have ownership. It's not just that the ownership has money. There are more wealthy people being bigger cheapskates than these teams. It's more of, it's not bad for baseball when other teams outside of these teams are successful. It would not have been a bad thing if Cleveland won. It would not have been a bad thing if the AL Central was able to get teams into the World Series. That's not a bad thing. That's bias, and that's the influence of these bigger markets or the coastal markets that think just because we're on the West Coast and in California and in New York, we're better than everyone just because of blah, blah, blah. No, you guys just have had teams longer because that's where all the population was condensed, and that's where the money was, at least at the start. I am not sitting here foaming at the mouth being like, oh, greatest World Series ever, because it's Yankees Dodgers. I don't sit there. I don't want to watch the Dodgers win the World Series. I don't care about that. It's just an interesting dynamic where it's like, oh, look, these teams spend money. They're in. Yes, those teams spend money, but they've also developed this talent. They've also added things in. They've also been creative. They've also done stuff that's helped build them up. They've also, navigated through things. And just leaning back and just saying, oh, they spend all that money is how they got there. Yeah, I mean, it's a big part of it, but I can't sit there and just fault the teams for spending money because they have owners who are more willing to do it. But my bigger beef, though, is baseball is saved. Baseball is interesting. Baseball is fascinating because thank goodness we have Dodgers, Yankees. Not a lot of complaints about the format this year. That's interesting. I thought the format was broken because we had too long of off times for the good teams or something like that. The beauty of the playoffs is you have to be the best team at the best time, at the right time. And they proved it this year. But I think that's what adds to the intrigue of the baseball playoffs is when teams like the Yankees and the Dodgers, built to be successful, built to win, lose. But now this is a moment that will be good for a lot of this will bring a lot of eyes onto the World Series. The ratings are going to be great for this. But I do think that it opens up an interesting can of worms. If we're going to sit here and just say the only World Series that really matter are between teams like this and completely ignore World Series like last year when two wildcard teams upset the odds, did something crazy and got there. So I don't know. I think there's a lot. I think this World Series, it kind of opens up an interesting can of worms as we evaluate that. But anyway, folks, that is going to do it for today's episode of Locked On Rockies. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. Find us on your favorite streaming services and on the Locked On Rockies YouTube channel. Be part of the show. Fire off your Rockies hot takes and let me know what is on your mind when it comes to the Colorado Rockies. Your offseason questions answered every time you leave them in the comments. We love answering questions here on the show, so make sure you are dropping your questions in the Locked On Rockies YouTube comment section below. And folks, for your second listen of the day, go check out Locked On MLB. And for more Colorado sports coverage, Locked On Broncos, Locked On Avalanche, Locked On Nuggets, and Locked On Buffs, free and streaming on your favorite streaming services. Until next time, this is Paul Holden saying so long from the Locked On Rockies podcast.